And so, beyond the thinking mind is an expanded field, a field of pure consciousness. And beyond the thinking mind, this expanded field of pure consciousness is alive and awake and intelligent. And here in this expanded field of pure consciousness, consciousness knows its true nature. Consciousness knows itself. It knows that it is free, that its nature is peace. It knows its own stillness, its own silence, and it flows in the knowing of itself, blissfully awake and aware of itself, ever flowing to know itself in its supreme fullness. Beyond the thinking mind is an expanded field. When we are identified with thoughts, we are meeting limitation. Thoughts create separation, they create limitation. It is not to make an enemy of thoughts, but it is to free thoughts, free thinking, and stop taking ownership of thoughts. Because when there is a taking ownership of thoughts, it creates a me and a being that feels to be separate, when in truth there is only one, and this vast open field of pure consciousness is that one, and it is the way to the deeper and deeper unfolding beyond the thinking mind. When the attention is not identified with thoughts and thinking, there is the capacity to realize the true essence nature as a boundless field of open, awake, pure awareness. And the true essence nature, it is not your true essence nature as in it belongs to someone. It is the true essence nature that belongs to no one, and yet all beings belong to it. Beyond the thinking mind, when mind can open to its cosmic universal nature, there is an opening to this expanded field that is awake, pure consciousness flowing within itself in the knowing of its own divine nature as light. The light of consciousness is shining, and the flow of intelligence is creative, it is divine, and it is this flow of intelligence, of this expanded awake field that creates the appearance of your life. It creates your thoughts. It creates absolutely everything in appearance. Now, if you identify with the objects, the thoughts, the objects of experience, you totally miss the vast, expanded field of awake, pure awareness that you are in truth, that you are not the one that is identified at the point of the mind-body, that you are not the thoughts, you are not the story, you are not any object that you can be aware of. The only way to recognize this truth is for the mind thinking to completely stop, to relax into its true nature. So inquiry can bring us beautifully by following a simple thought: who am I? What is this I in truth? That single thought is non-divisive, it is open, and it can bring us to the open field. If we are looking for an answer, consciousness will turn right back around and head right back into identification with the mind. So when we find no objective answer, and what we discover is this vast, open, expanded field of pure consciousness that makes no sense to the mind, then we are truly opening to the essence nature. We are opening to the field of intelligence, where intelligence alone knows and does not need the mind to confirm. We do not need to think about anything. Now, thinking is useful for functioning, but not in the way the mind thinks. Now, the mind can get very attached to thinking, and thoughts can get very protective about thoughts and try to find a way to make thoughts part of the absolute reality. But in truth, that kind of protection has to fall away in order for that divisive thinking that thinks it knows something. It has to relax and fall into its essence nature. So mind has to fall into the remembering of its universal cosmic nature as a wide open field of expanded, full, rich, pure awareness, in order that there is enough space, enough light, the light of consciousness, the light of awake, aware consciousness. There has to be enough spaciousness, as in unlimited, boundless spaciousness, and enough light, as in pure divine light, in order for consciousness to remember its pure essence nature and really wake up to its own freedom, to remember its own freedom. And it's only here in the silence, in the stillness, in the vast, open, boundless landscape of pure consciousness that this opening to true essence nature can truly wake up and remember itself. Now, there can be these glimpses and tastes, and there can be a sense of an expanded mind. But until that mind stops completely, just for a nanosecond, enough that there is no activity, true silence, true stillness, no activity, so that there are no thought waves creating distraction, so that consciousness can really meet and remember its own purity. Now, you can recognize that in the moments of this kind of clear seeing, it is so clear that you are not the person, that you are not limited, that you are not the me, you are not the thoughts, you are not the story. Because as the awake awareness, you are awake and aware of that one. You can see that one, and you can recognize that you are not limited to what you once thought you were limited to. In a way, you cannot find yourself in the same way. You cannot find yourself as a limited being, because the felt sense of what you are is unlimited. And once you open to feel the true boundless expansion of your true essence nature, you can never fit yourself back in the box. You can never fit your infinite self back in the body, mind. You can never, ever fit yourself back in. Now, thoughts can come, distractions can come, and you can imagine a limited perspective, but the deepest knowing of who you are is never, ever limited again in truth. Now, as we are glimpsing and tasting this reality, can feel like going backwards and forwards, but there is a moment of revelation that opens the infinity of who you are. And once the infinity of you is discovered, you can never fit the infinite into the finite, can never fit that back in, cannot shift the perspective back. You can temporarily identify, but the deepest knowing remains, the knowing of your infinite unbounded nature, the knowing of the freedom of who you are, the knowing of the deep abiding peace. Remember the vast open field that is ever fresh and awake to itself, beyond the thinking mind, where there are no vrittis, where there are no thought waves. There is a silence, a stillness so deep and pure. Cannot know it with the mind, can only know it in the absence of mind, can only know yourself in the absence of the sense of the me and the sense of limitation. The remembering of yourself is right here, beyond thinking mind. So there is nothing to do, nothing to understand, no instructions to follow, because there is nothing here in what is being spoken for the mind. Although the mind will feast upon conceptualizing and following the words, attempting, and that is beautiful, because when the mind has something to munch upon, it's distracted within its munching upon what it thinks it understands. And all the while, the glorious grace is that consciousness is hearing itself. So we could say there is an invitation to listen with your whole being. Listen as the awareness that is just receiving. Do not listen as a me. Do not listen with a sense of trying to get something or get somewhere or achieve something. Do not fall prey to the thoughts that start thinking, have I got it? Has that happened to me? Am I there? Is this it? Because all of that is not it. All of that is thoughts, are thoughts that the mind is creating. Just to be aware of that, because all of that is just a distraction. You are the awareness of the thoughts. You are not the thoughts. Even the most magical thoughts that you think are spiritual and thoughts of freedom, you are not those thoughts. You are before every thought. There is not a single thought that you are. In fact, you do not own a single thought. They are not even your own. It is just the patterning of consciousness that is moving in a limited formation. And in that limited formation, consciousness has the capacity to identify within that limited pattern. You see, it's not personal. There's not someone, there's not a mind that's working it out. There's not a mind that's getting it. There's not a mind that has any value in this truth at all. It is only when the mind of the me, remembers its cosmic nature. Now, the only thought that is useful is the thought that says, who am I? What is this I? Who are these thoughts arising to? Where is seeing happening? These kind of thoughts are useful only though when they bring us to an open, expanded field that is before thought. In a way, these kind of thoughts are true inquiry. They are not the kind of imagined inquiry which is about contemplation. Contemplation of the mind will keep you locked in the maze of the mind and the me that imagines it's thinking about deep things. But thinking about is not where this realization is. So there is a humbling. There is a humbling that naturally happens, but not a humbling that you can do. It is a humbling that naturally happens when there is the realization that what you are is before every thought, before all thought, that you are the mind, the clear mind, the perfect mind, but the clear mind, the perfect mind, the cosmic mind, the universal mind is a field of intelligence. It's not thoughts. It's not any kind of objective sense of reality. It is a reality that is a pure, wide open, unlimited field that is bright, brilliant, illuminated, radiant in the knowing of its own nature. So as these words come, there is nothing to do, nothing to even follow. The invitation is to listen as the listening. Do not be someone that is listening, the listener. Open to receive, be aware as the awareness, and openly receive the sharing, the invitation, the pointings. The pointings are an invitation to immediately recognize, spontaneously recognize, remember, recognize what is being spoken. To be here now, right now, this moment, wide awake in this vast, open, unlimited field. To be here now as the presence, to not understand, to not need to make sense, but to feel the felt sense of being and the felt sense of being the being that is the expanded field, that the being is wide open, expanded openness. No sense of being somewhere or something or knowing anything or grounding or rooting into any thought or experience, What we are speaking of is before all experience. It is before everything. As the awareness that is awake, awake and aware of everything. Anything that you are aware of, you are not. If you can be aware of it, then that you are not. But when awareness itself is awake and aware only of itself, there is a collapse into a knowing, a clear seeing, a clarity, just a recognition of the open field, of the unlimited, boundless, expanded field, and that this is the truth of who you are. This is the true essence nature of all beings, and it is bright and shining in the radiance of its own knowing, wide open before thought, before all protection, before a single thought identifies the I with the body and the mind and the thinking. There is this spacious freedom, and you are the freedom. And here the silent peace, the silence before the first thought, the stillness before the vrittis, the thought waves, the silence, the stillness, the deep presence of being. Aware only of yourself being here, simply being here, just like this. Aware of the mind and the thinking that moves and changes, aware of body sensations, aware of all that is moving and changing, aware of sense perception and how sense perception fragments and divides the moment as if sense perception belongs to the me. Before everything that moves and changes is a field of silent peace. This silent peace is always here, still and silent. It is the felt sense of presence itself. Presence itself is right here, awake, silent, still and deep in the knowing of itself. As these words are coming, it is to attune to the resonance. The resonance is the silence. It is the stillness. It is the deep, resonant peace of being. Be aware of the thoughts, witnessing the thoughts. Witnessing the thoughts that come and go. In fact, everything that's coming and going is a thought, and it is the thoughts that create the appearance of me and my life. So we come before this to the vast, open, expanded field of intelligence where the knowing of consciousness knows. So as these words are coming, and you can feel the resonance, there is a vibration, a frequency, which is stillness, silence. It is presence itself. It is, we could say, the felt sense of your own presence, but it's not me being present to the moment. It's deeper, it's more profound, and it's not attached to the me. It's not the present moment. It is presence itself. Presence itself is before the present moment. It is presence itself, present to itself, present to its own stillness, present to its own silence, present only to itself, simply being itself. So the pointings are pointing consciousness itself to remember itself. It is not offering anything to the mind to understand. There is nothing to do at all, but relax and be here, be openly receptive, be aware and watching if there are obscurations attempting to sabotage and distract. Just to be aware, see the thoughts that come and go, and do not try to stop them. Just be aware. As there is enough openness and spaciousness for thinking to just happen without identification, thinking itself will settle out. That the thoughts are not yours, they do not belong to you. There is no one really for them to belong to. The whole idea that they are your thoughts is a thought itself. So it's all thoughts. Everything, me, my life, my thoughts, my moods, my emotions, my story, my drama, my wounds, all of it, it's just thought. You are before thought. You are before the most terrifying thought. You are before the most profound spiritual thought. You are before every thought. You are not a thought. Quite simple. Thoughts are waves and patterns in consciousness, and you are the pure awareness that is still and silent. You are not the patterns and waves of consciousness. In essence, you are the same consciousness that creates those patterns and flows. But if you identify yourself with a pattern and a flow, you will feel to be someone, and you can experience some value, can create an experience out of the patterns and flows. But this is not freedom. Freedom is the vast open spaciousness where presence is just present to itself and knows itself as the infinite, eternal, timeless being that just is, simple and free, pure, innocent, awake openness. So the invitation to come to innocence, to come to simplicity, to soften, to let go, to relax, to just be here, to need nothing, to want nothing, to see there is nowhere to get to. There's nothing that the me can do. This in itself is a very profound recognition when the recognition that the me and the mind cannot ever get this. There is a deeper relaxation, a surrender. And that kind of surrender is absolutely essential because life itself, consciousness itself, is surrendering into itself and into itself, into itself. Even the holiest divine is surrendering into herself, into herself, into herself. It is that perpetual surrender of divine wholeness that actually is the power and momentum that gives rise to all that we see on the surface of life. Amazingly, astoundingly, astonishingly, that wholeness is whole purely out of the flow of divine surrender and the constant collapsing into herself. That momentum itself is the power. It is the glory. It is the flow of pure devotion. So you see, surrender, surrender, surrender. We have no idea through the mind what surrender is at all. Surrender is when the mind surrenders to consciousness, when mind consciousness surrenders to the pure consciousness, and mind and thinking collapses into the flow of pure intelligence. Now, in the flow of pure intelligence, intelligence itself, it has a way of bringing forward insight. It is, in a way, it has a way of expressing itself, but it is not the same as divisive thought. Thoughts that create separation, thoughts of the me are divisive, right? Fragmenting, creating a protective separation. Whereas the flow of intelligence is able to express itself. It's able to express itself in a very profound way. It uses language, and yet it is still the silence, still the deep, unmoving silence, expressing itself to itself. So the invitation is to receive this silent sharing on the level of silence, on the level of the resonance of being, awake and open, receiving, listening, aware, receiving, remembering the deep peace of the silence, the deep peace of the silent being. The presence, the stillness, the simplicity. As you recognize the resonance, there is a sense of aliveness in the presence, and the aliveness in the presence, it is everywhere. It is an unbounded aliveness, and it is the consciousness recognizing itself. And so the felt sense of the aliveness is your consciousness, the consciousness that you are recognizing alive and awake to itself. So it is to be with the aliveness, to be with the alive, awake field, and recognize that this resonance, it's silent, it's still, and it's always here. It never ever changes, never ever changes. It's always here, just like this. Silent, freedom, awakeness, openness, empty of content, and full here of yourself, just simply being. So there is nothing to do. It is the flow of consciousness itself that calls itself deeper into the silent remembering of the being, of the essence nature. Remember the stillness. Remember the unbounded field that is infinite and free. Remember the timeless presence of now that is still and silent, just here, just like this. Opening to the silent field, there are no techniques that are needed. Let go of everything. Let go of everything. It is to let go of everything. 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 Let it all go. Let go of every sense of any spiritual experience that ever has been had, because anything that we hang on to is keeping us bound. The invitation is to come into the deep revelation of yourself so you can let go of any glimpse or taste or any experience you have ever had of yourself, because here you are, free and open, ever fresh, ever luminous, here as the silent being. Nothing needs to be held onto. It's always this moment here now. Nothing has ever been achieved. This is not about spiritual ambition and getting somewhere. It is to keep surrendering everything into the moment, surrendering it in, because someone that has had an experience or has got something or got somewhere is holding a position, and the mind is interpreting something that it cannot interpret. So the great glory is just to relax and relax again and relax again and let go and let go and let go, and just let the beauty and flow and aliveness of your true essence nature come for you. Let it come for you. Let it come and get you. Let it come for you, right? Where the mind is relaxed and soft and thoughts are not dominating, where the attention is just relaxed, then this flow of pure consciousness can flow in and remember itself. Remember that this is who you are, that you are not the person you have imagined yourself to be. You are not the thoughts, the story. You're not any of that. Not in truth. Not in truth. That divine reality is a vast, expanded field where no one is here and no one knows nothing. It's just a field of shining, resonant light. It knows itself. The being knows itself. The consciousness knows itself. And it's so full and so rich, joyous, happy for no reason, causeless, utterly causeless, and simultaneously flowing in this love and devotion just for itself, in awe, wonder, cannot believe it. Wow, wow, wow. Just in absolute awestruck wonder at the beauty, at the magnificence, at the glorious brilliance of its own shining, infinite beauty. Not with words, not defining, just in the absolute radiant shining, luminous. That just allow the words to carry you into yourself. Remember the simple being. Just allow the speaking to be the same as what is listening, and to carry itself deeper into the silent depths. So the resonance is silent and deep and still. Allow the flow of the speaking to carry you deeper into yourself. Everything that is spoken here is all about carrying you beyond the mind and the story and the me and all the things the mind thinks is important, to realize the absolute irrelevance of it all of the subtleties and the particulars of the story that the me loves to talk about. It's just an invitation to say, none of it matters. None of it matters. If you focus upon it and you get stuck in the details and the ideas that you need to fix this and fix that, it's all phenomena. It's just to not focus upon that way of being, because it is limiting, it's limited, and it's not reality. You cannot understand with the mind what it is to live this. So just let go and live it. Find out in the spontaneous moment what it is to be life, to be yourself. You cannot make a security plan that when you let go, that you need it to be like this or like that. You cannot put out these bargaining tools to the divine. You cannot know what it is to live this. But if it was terrible, we wouldn't be speaking about it. We wouldn't be in jubilant celebration of the glory that it is to live this truth. We wouldn't be inviting every being into this glorious freedom. All that is lost is suffering. All that is lost is misery. But you cannot sell it to the mind, because there's nothing to buy. There's nothing to get. There's nothing for the mind here. So we can't even, and there's no point trying to convince the mind, because there's nothing that the mind or the me can do. The glory is that in perfect divine timing, consciousness itself remembers and wakes up to itself, opens to its infinite vastness, opens to its profound, true intelligence before the thinking mind, beyond the thinking mind, is a field of absolute pure consciousness. And this is who you are. It does not even matter if there is a resonant recognition of this in this moment, because in perfect timing, the recognition opens. There's no success or failure. There's nothing to get. The great glory is that you already are. And so what is speaking to itself. It already knows. You already know yourself in this true essence nature. And so really what is speaking is yourself. You are speaking to yourself and coaxing yourself out of the limited flow of the patterns of consciousness that you are habituated to move in. This is yourself speaking to you to say, do not be fooled by that limited perspective. Do not get stuck. It's time. This moment is the perfect moment to remember yourself. And so as these words come, where you feel a semblance of remembering, where you feel a relaxation, don't be looking for, have I got it? Am I there? Is this it? Because it doesn't get recognized in that way. That's the mind wanting to recognize in the way the mind grabs on and finds an object that it can grip onto. But it's not like that. What is important is where you're feeling the sense of relaxation, the calm, the tranquility, the serenity, the peacefulness of being. Where you are feeling the relaxation, the openness, maybe the aliveness the presence, where you can sense the resonance, a lightness, an openness, a sense of freedom, a felt sense that what you are is expanded, is unlimited and boundless, a felt sense of being everywhere and yet not understanding that at all with the mind. This is what we're speaking of, where we're not trying to confirm in the mind, because it's impossible ever for the mind to understand this infinity. Only when mind, thinking completely relaxes, can consciousness truly flow in the infinity of its own essence nature. Yes, of course, once we open to this truth and we know the unboundedness and the purity of what we are, there's still residue. There's still residue of personhood, but we know that everything that we thought we were belongs to this universal, infinite, unbounded consciousness. So we're not concerned about having to unravel the remaining knots. We're not concerned that it might take quite a long time in the play of time, because we just know that keeping the focus with the glory, not being bothered by the details and the story, but really resting in the deep, silent presence of being. And that we are here to glorify the glory, that we're here to dance in jubilant celebration, in the aliveness, in the flow of bliss, because really the way that we deepen this incredible profundity of knowing what we are as consciousness, the way is to drink in the blissful nectar of being. It's to drink in the unknowable, alive knowing of the being just being itself. It's to drink in the resonance, the blissful being, because this is how we open to this vast field of intelligence that knows itself. We open to where all thinking happens. It's like we open to the source. We open to the source intelligence, where we're not fooled, we're not bothered by all that stuff on the surface, because here we are in the workings, we're here in the fine mechanics of it all. And here we are getting right in there in the subtlety, the nuts and bolts of consciousness, right? Where we're here as the consciousness being consciously awake to its own intelligence. And so we're not concerned with the particulars on the surface of life when we're getting right down here in the light, in the finer frequencies, because it's in the finer frequencies that we open more to the unified field, that we refine and we refine, where we have this capacity to receive all of life. We receive all of life as life itself. We align with nature in the frequency, the vibration of the consciousness that we are in truth. And here the true refinement, the refining of subtle perception, the refining of the nervous system to its cosmic nature and the intelligence of a true subtle nervous system, right? We're refining and refining into the subtler and more flowing reverberations of consciousness in its fineness, right? So as these words are coming, you do not need to understand. In fact, let's say you cannot possibly understand, but there's a certain way that you can feel like a pull, like an aliveness that doesn't make any sense, because you already are this. This is what we are speaking of, is what you are made of. You're made of these flows of intelligence. You're made of light and resonances. You're made of fine frequencies. And so as these words come, the consciousness recognizes itself, and you start to resonate at finer frequencies and to feel a sense of what you are. You cannot understand this with the mind, so there's no point even trying to attempt. You can be aware of mind, but we're deeper than mind. We're deeper in the finer frequencies of consciousness, where you, as the being, are recognizing your own silence, your own stillness, your own presence. And there's nothing here but this presence. Now here, if thoughts are coming and going, you can be aware of the thoughts that are coming and going, but fall into the innocence, the openness, the awakeness of simply being yourself. The silence that is ever peaceful, the stillness that is unmoving, unchanging. Just being here. As these words are speaking to itself, it is enlivening the remembering, enlivening the silence. So to feel the silence, receive the silence in the listening, that there is the sound of silence, the nadam is the aliveness of silence. So present, so rich. This is so nourishing to the being. Whatever the mind is thinking about, whatever ideas are happening on the surface of life, there is something so profound happening here, whether you know it or not. And that is the glory, is you do not even need to know what is happening here, because this is consciousness consciously refining itself, bringing forward the subtle frequencies, refining and culturing itself to be able to recognize itself deeper in the silence, in the blissful innocence, that what you are is this silence. What you are is this being that knows itself, just being itself. Just silent explosion, a bomb of truth going off and bringing more silence, more rapturous stillness, more peace. Here you are, being yourself. You do not even know how you got here. You do not need to remember the way, because you are always here, just like this. It is the spontaneous remembering that you are the vast open field, the expanded field of silent being, simply aware and awake of itself, just being. Beyond the thinking mind is a field of expanded intelligence that is awake and ever free in the knowing of itself, freedom itself. silence itself, ever present, boundless. The felt sense of being, the being is of being everywhere. As there is a recognition in the knowing of the being, the sense of the knowing flows and it brings the sense of being everything. It starts to flow into itself and bring the sense of being everything. So as consciousness really wakes up to itself, it knows itself first as the field of silent peace, and then it starts to really recognize itself in the flow of life and feel itself to be one with everything. Just starts refining to know itself. Sometimes it explodes into the remembering of itself, being everything, everywhere. The subtle perception as it opens brings the joy, the delight, the blissful remembering, the happiness, the subtlety of these finer, finer frequencies as there is an opening, as consciousness surrenders into itself. Just starts to feel the subtlety of itself, happy, joyful, jubilant in the recognition of itself, just starting to bubble up like the effervescence that bubbles forward when you take the cork out of champagne and it just bubbles up in this effervescent celebration, right? That's why we love that. Bubbling up. It's because this is the true nature. We bubble up in this effervescent bubbling of joyful, gleeful, delighted, just in the flow, right? And then, yes, drink yourself in and find that you are utterly intoxicated with the nectar of your own blissful knowing of yourself, that you are utterly intoxicated in love with yourself, just being, that you just want to bubble up and fall into yourself, just fall into yourself, be absolutely saturated with the beauty and the radiance and the light of being yourself, that you're not concerned any longer with thoughts and the surface of life, that you are just bubbling up in the aliveness of your own presence and just drinking in the nectar of your own beauty, your own silence, and just drinking that in, you are falling deeper into yourself like a intoxicated, devotional surrender into yourself, falling deeper and deeper into yourself, feeling the joy, the happiness. It's causeless. It feels so blissful and celebratory for absolutely no reason. And love is here, loving itself. You are in love with yourself. You just want to fall into yourself, eat yourself up, eat all of yourself up in utter devouring of your own incredible beauty, just falling in, drinking in the nectar of your own incredible, boundless being, being yourself. You see, you do not need to understand the words. It does not matter if a random thought pops in and says, what? Doesn't matter. Watch it and be carried into something that is unfathomable and beyond the thinking mind. Be carried into yourself. Be carried beyond all of the imaginings of what you think is important into this glory that you are, beyond, before the thinking mind, the consciousness that is in constant celebration of itself, alive with its own presence and flowing in the knowing of itself. Here, deep, deep in the pure consciousness, the silence, the stillness, the simplicity of simply being yourself, just like this, just like this, where you feel the resonance, the sense of unboundedness, the sense of relaxed, soft openness, emptiness, that there are no thoughts here. There's just this wide open field of freedom, of peace, of being. And this is the being that you are. This is your true essence, nature. Simply this, just like this. Innocent and open and just being the immaculate, perfect being, just like this. Radiant, light, freedom, beauty beyond imagining. Consciousness, consciously awake to itself, aware of its own purity, just being here, just being here. Resting, resting in the silence, the silent resonance, the silent peace that knows only itself, that you are this peace. You are the silence. You are the silent self, radiant, unbounded freedom, ever free, ever pure. You have always known this truth. You are just remembering your essence nature, your true natural being, remembering the consciousness, pure and free flowing before the patterns of the mind consciousness, free flowing. And as the consciousness, the essence really recognizes and wakes up to itself, the patterns of consciousness that make up thinking mind relax into the purity. There's a slowing, a quietening of thinking mind, and the consciousness is slowing, quietening, relaxing into its essence nature. Here, the wide open field, that you are the wide open field. As consciousness recognizes itself, it recognizes itself before the limitation of the thinking mind, recognizes itself as unlimited, infinite, expanded intelligence, recognizes itself out of limitation, recognizes its unbounded freedom, where the sense of me collapses into the felt sense of being, the unbounded field, no longer identified with the thinking mind that is limited, that the true identity is the unlimited pure consciousness, and you are unlimited, uncontained. Remember, mind, your own true nature, that you are not a limited thinking mind, that you are unlimited universal consciousness, that you are everywhere awake to yourself here, utterly free, and that you have always been free, that you are not restricted or restrained by patterns of thinking. You are not limited by any thought that comes and goes, that you are unlimited freedom. And here you are exuberantly joyful and gleeful and happy because you are free and you are not the story. You are not the beliefs or the concepts or ideas. You are not anything learned. You are utterly free and before everything. Presence, not person. Silence, not someone. Emptiness, not ego. Boundless peace, utterly free is the naturalness of who you are. Nothing that the mind can do, nothing that the mind needs to do. Just as consciousness recognizes itself here, it naturally unravels its mindiness, its identification and limitation. It naturally unravels, undresses, unravels into its essence nature, relaxes out of the habitual egocentric patterns of thinking into the vast openness. And here you are, utterly free, clear, transparent, openness, emptiness, before everything. Here you are, shining, radiant vastness. Silence. You are silence. You are freedom. You are unbounded. Remember the open field that is ever free and ever awake, to feel the vastness, to feel the unboundedness, to recognize in consciousness itself the incredible freedom that you always have been, that you have never been bound, you have never been limited, you have never been contained, you have always been free. Hallelujah. It's the truth. You have always been the freedom, the glory. In this moment, in the innermost being, receive the grace and confirm this remembering that you are presence, presence unbounded, infinite. Feel yourself to be everywhere expanded, that you have no edges, that you are indeed unbounded. Confirm in the innermost being, in the innermost purity of your own consciousness, that we open to discover that right inside our own presence is an unlimited field, that anything that we are seeking is not outside, it's inside our own consciousness, that we have to come inside our own consciousness to expand into our infinite nature, that we cannot discover the infinite unbounded in the projected world that is just an appearance. We have to come into the consciousness from where everything arises to know that what we think of as me and my life is just a projected reality. It's a projected world. And we have to come to the innermost workings of our own consciousness, the field of intelligence where we can confirm this, and the knowing of this sets us free from personhood and brings us to the universal truth of who we are. The gorgeous thing is that as we open to this field of the infinite starts to infuse into what we have thought of as the body and the me. It's like our whole life, the whole living of life is pervaded and infused with more of the infinite knowing of yourself, so that the infinite being starts to reach the surface of life and be lived right on the surface of life, that you are the infinite presence. And this infinite presence that you are starts to move through the nervous system and get to the surface of life and shine on the surface of life as life itself. So everything that you have imagined yourself to be, the person that you have imagined yourself to be, starts to be infused with infinity. The being starts to pervade all that you have believed yourself to be, because the limited patterns are unraveling and relaxing, and the full immaculate flow is able to get closer, get right in there into all the fibers and atoms of your being, right? So that even your body, what you think of as the physical body, the subtle body, is being infused and refined, cultured, and more of the divine radiance is going to start to come to the surface, to shine right on the surface, right? The radiant shining light, the radiant heart, the light that you are in truth, the divine wholeness. The more that we discover it in consciousness, deep, and confirm this in consciousness, the more that this knowing just takes over everything, and all of the life starts to transform. And the beauty is that the life starts to transform in the most beautiful ways, because we're bringing forward these divine and pure flows. We're bringing forward our divine essence, nature. We're bringing forward the light and the truth. And so the great misunderstanding is unraveled so that this radiant truth can get right to the surface. It's like right at the deep level of intelligence, what we're creating just starts to be so much more refined. You know, we have to be so aware that whatever we are thinking about, we are creating, right? So the thinking mind and the entangled consciousness is creating the appearance of your life. So once we come to this deeper wide open field of intelligence, we're creating from the field of intelligence. We're creating from much finer and finer frequencies. We're not creating more misery, more suffering, more karma. We're creating divine life. We're divine life living itself and moving right on the surface, like spiraling up to the surface and exploding on the surface. And so the sense of your uniqueness, your individuality, you're not individual as in separate, but you have a uniqueness, and that is completely supported by this deep, deep knowing in consciousness that the support is coming from the deeper divine light, right? So we're falling in and in and in. It's as if we no longer have desires as a me, but what we are pulled to create is in complete collaboration, because it's actually the divine that is creating and bringing to the surface that light, that appearance. Divine life is being brought right to the surface. So we want to be aware of what we are thinking about, what we are occupying our time with, right? Because are we dancing a small dance? Are we creating more misery? Are we thinking our way into more karma? Or are we opening to this vast, infinite field where here the creative intelligence is creating from a much deeper, refined frequency, right? We're creating from a much finer frequency. But of course, there's no me that's creating for me. It's everything that we're pulled to move into, the way that life is unfolding. It's the divine life unfolding. And that's where we start to notice that the life has more flow, more ease, more happiness, more grace, right? Because we're attuned with that flow of grace. And as we deepen and deepen and deepen, it's this ever deepening into the divine wholeness, ever deepening into divine wholeness. This is what we're up to. This is what we're up to. We're not trying to fix it on the surface of life. We're not trying to work it out in the particulars. We're digging deep, right deep into the golden, extraordinary light of pure consciousness and beyond, into the divine light frequencies, so that we can truly, truly bring this divine, shining, radiant life right to the surface, right to the surface. The greatest service is to know yourself, know who you are, and live in this deep, resonant knowing of yourself. Being the being, being the being, ever refining into being the whole unified field, ever deepening into the finer and finer frequencies of the divine until nothing else is left but the divine in its purity, in its power and glory. And then we are allowing this divine to purify and transform so that she can get right to the surface of life, affecting all of life. This is what we are here for. So where you feel the resonance, do not try to understand, just say yes. Just say yes with all that you are. Just say yes in the resonance to be the silence. Yes and yes and yes. To let go and remember, to fall in and in and in, where you feel the resonance, the recognition, to just say yes and drink in the bliss, the blissful nectar of being yourself, resting in the vast ocean of nectarine bliss and drinking in the knowing, whether it is in the silence, the peace, in the aliveness, wherever the recognition is, just fall into yourself. Fall into yourself. The silence, the stillness, the simplicity and innocence of just being here, open, receptive, aware, awake.